We are a podcast for product marketers and B2B SaaS who feel misunderstood of what they do.
From someone who truly gets what you do and
basically help you feel less like a misfit, being unignorable in your role.
We got another one, another episode of Weird Not Marketers. Just the boys, though. No guess.
Season 4.
That's right. That's right. It's our first Misfit episode of season 4. This is exciting. Doing it on a Sunday afternoon for y'all listening, and that's how dedicated we are. We don't hang out.
Time flies.
We don't go work out. We don't cook long, strenuous meals that take all day to make. Right? We get on the pod. We answer some burning questions. And so, Gab, we got a fun one today. We're going to talk about message testing.
Let's go.
How excited are you for this?
I'm very excited. I feel like it's very timely with what I've been working on. And again, I hope I don't get too much roasted on this episode by you guys. But usually it's fine. Usually you hold back a little bit.
I mean, it's the winter up in Quebec. You need the heat.
Yeah, exactly. It's starting. Spring is there, but yeah, it's still very much not winter.
Still thawing off.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Then, yeah, I think we're going to jump in, talk about message testing. And I love it for a lot of different reasons. Mainly, it's just the rush of seeing the scientific method either play out the way I want to or play out not the way I want to. I've had both happen. We'll talk about that. And Gab, I think you're going to jump in and tell us a little bit more about your working process. So, boys, question to start it off. How many, if you were to take a guess, how many product marketers out of 10 do you think have actually tested a message at least once in their life?
Out of 10?
Yeah. 1 out of 10. What percentage? My guess is like 3.
3 out of 10, so 30%. I think there's something to take into account because I think a bunch of PMMs would be, oh yeah, we did test our message, but it might be A/B test, which I don't think is a good way for PMMs to test message. It's always dependent on the context.
Why do you think that's a good way?
Again, for context, I almost been a decade in marketing, and I feel like A/B test is the solution that is getting the most thrown out there for any types of problems. And I would even go to not even any type of problem, but sometimes just there's basically, we don't want to commit. So we'll just say, oh, let's test it out. So basically my take is, I think A/B test is often the solution that is getting thrown out for a lot of different situations. But the thing is, if you want an A/B test to really be statistical significant and telling you, okay, this version of your CTA is blue instead of red, and it increased the conversion by 35%. You need a lot of data to be able to do that. And you need to be able to have the right hypothesis. You need to be able to understand what's the variation is going to be. I don't want to go into too much details, but I think oftentimes what's happening is we want to A/B test specific elements, but we don't have like enough volume at all for it to matter. So we're just throwing it in terms of, oh, let's A/B test those subject line of a newsletter with like over 150 like respondent. Like it won't tell you anything. It can tell you some stuff, but ultimately this is not taking the significance of those tests in mind. It might tell you a variation, but I don't think it's something that is worth doing except in specific situation and context when you can actually get something out of it.
Yeah, no, that's fair. And I would be in your camp probably too. With that, I don't like A/B tests in terms of, okay, that's going to determine the messaging. You nailed it. It takes a lot of data and normally a lot of time because most people don't have enough people come to their whatever page you want to test. Sometimes it's the home page. A lot of times it's those auxiliary pages that get far less traffic. And I always think, I hate testing visuals. Like, even if the visuals are the exact same, I just testing out a blank canvas, nothing to take your eyes off other than the message, because I think that's what you're testing, right? I don't want your eyes wandering off into whatever's on the right side of the hero or scrolling through the page and part of your decision process, something is getting taken off about a visual. I just want to be focused on the actual message. So I've never been a huge fan of traditional A/B tests either. What about you, Zach?
What I'm stuck on is when do I A/B test versus message test? Is there like a one? Is there a right way, or is there a wrong way, or is there a context clues that I should be looking out for?
That's a fair question. Again, depends on what you want to say by when you message test, because message test can be like, it can be basically validation of certain elements of your messaging, such as value prop or something else. But it can also be ultimately like different messages from outbound, right? Some salespeople are super happy, but they understand that basically their messaging can just be copy, right? Key elements that you have in a cold email. When for marketing, oftentimes that messaging is how it's going to be consistent across the sales org with sales enablement, how it's going to be very specific when we talk about key features and stuff like that to our ICP. So again, like I think A/B testing is ideal when you try to do, for example, maybe conversion rate optimization. You have a landing page and you already have a baseline. You're like, okay, maybe we can tweak some of the copies, some of the headlines that we know haven't necessarily been working. Maybe we want to be more bold or stuff like that. It's basically ideal to me to scale what's already working. If your goal is, okay, so I want to support my positioning, right? Support my product launches. I want to identify before launching the big guns and going all in. I want to identify, is there a new market or a new segment that find this attractive, that find I'm able to get their attention with? So that's how I would personally differentiate message testing or messaging testing and A/B test. One of them is more scaling and stuff like that, while the other is more around validating some qualitative elements or try to see if there's a nudge before going in a different direction or segment.
Mm-hmm.
This is bringing me also like a question. When I was working at ShareWeb, we were working on, I think it was a feature launch, and we were processing. I was looking at the brief and I was like just trying to find ways, because my role was like bring revenue, right? Push this SaaS to a whole new level. So I was thinking about that. And then during the brief word and the discussion when that was, how do we name that subject line, right? What title do we decide to go for that feature launch? And I remember someone very senior in the marketing team said, "Oh, let's A/B test it." And I was like, "Dude, we're sending that to 150 people. It won't matter. Can we just commit?" And that's the thing. Most team in those briefs don't commit. I'm sure you guys were part of it too. You're in with a bunch of people, marketing, sales, product sometimes, and you're like, "What's happening, right? Can we just move?" Because the sooner you move, the sooner you ship. The sooner you ship, the sooner you learn. The sooner you learn, the sooner you can improve, right? So I was like, why? Do you have 15 years of experience in marketing? You drop me A/B test on 150 people via a feature launch. What will it change? Why can we commit to something that is linked to our messaging? And ultimately, let's just take a copy that makes sense for whatever reason based on like past data or something, right? So there's always, that's my beef with A/B tests. I heard it so many times in so different occasions that I'm like, at that point, try to understand what's behind a good A/B test and then do the right action. But let's commit and then let's track if there's a way we can improve or a new direction we want to take.
So the reason why I'll do a message test is to give confidence to stakeholders to do something versus analysis paralysis.
Yeah, exactly. Because like we know that messaging is something that is like we always striving for the perfect version, but perfect version don't exist. And sometimes the lack of waiting for perfection makes us lose ground to the competition. So
Well,
instead,
yeah,
let's go ahead.
yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, I think you're 100% right. It's like that lack of commitment. It's interesting because I've always looked at messaging as strategy, but then that's always gets muddied with tactical. And I think that's like the root of it is people would never typically go into making decisions like that. Like big strategy decisions. Like they don't take weeks and weeks. They'll look at data and they'll be like, "All right, this is where we need to move to." But there's just something unique about messaging and how it's perceived as a more of a tactical exercise that I think it gets like analysis paralysis far more. And I want to know what you guys think about that because that's just what I've seen in my personal experience. Oh, the color of a banner. Like I'm wrapping into these things. Exactly how an email sounds. Um, like all these little like things that you can nitpick, right? But when you look at strategy, I just don't see that in other buckets of strategy. Pricing and messaging are like the two where I just see it's like a constant no decision. But I rarely see sales enablement, VP being like, yeah, I'm not sure what strategy we should go with for our sales team. Should we go with MedPick? Should we go with whatever? Like, it's they make a decision.
It's being
Um,
pragmatic, right? Versus hoping for the
yeah,
perfect opportunity or the signal that, hey, you're 100% risk free, right?
yeah. Is our strategy going to be like our product strategy going to be focused on making things quicker and faster, or we're going to focus on the analytics side, right? Like people make a decision is what I've noticed. But when it comes down to messaging and pricing, I've just noticed that for some reason, those seem to be the circles that always go around and around.
Do you feel that the purpose of message testing is to refine what makes your product unique, or is that something that people already know and we're trying to solve a different problem?
I love it. I think it's definitely that. The idea is, again, like marketing and product marketing will always have people telling us how to do our job, which again, I think can be a good thing because then it's just pushing you to show them, okay, I can drive results. You can have your opinion, but I can drive results. I can show you how it works. Uh, but in that case, when you're able to explain what's making your product unique because of that message testing, that's a great way of showing value as a product marketer because essentially you are owning a part of differentiation. You owning a part of uniqueness, and you're able to link actual testimonials or like face value or prospect reaction on this.
Yeah. Another example that comes to mind for me, Gab, is that I was working with a previous client and we were doing user interviews to really understand why they loved their product. Because the problem we were solving at the time was it was a relatively new product in like marketing analytics, and it was looking to go up against like traditional ways of how to like evaluate marketing budget ROI, our favorite topic for especially non-marketers. And the problem was the team internally was saying, we're not that. We are not like marketing mix models. That is not who we are. But then like, who are we? Like, because I don't know, ironic for us, but if we go around and say we're not this, people are gonna ask next, well, like, what's my frame of reference? How do I compare you? Because for our buyers, like funny enough, when I was having these interviews, they were like, we see you as in this space, but you're different. You're not, you are, one buyer said it best, you are an agile. And I was like, oh shit. And I think it hit the nail on the head. It's like now we're taking a topic that we know, this industry, and we're introducing a new element that we haven't seen before that we want to see in our product. So I felt that was like a really cool, I think the avenue for me was talking to users. So my question for you, Gab, is that with message testing, is it essentially talking to customers then? Or is there a more formulaic approach that I might be missing when I'm thinking about that?
That's a good question, and I love the way you're putting it in your own words. But it's basically we always try to filter the ICP, and that's why you need to have kind of your foundation properly. If your product is an urgent, if you're not talking about an urgent problem, it's going to be hard to actually test if that's an urgent problem. But to answer your question, I think it's basically one to talk to a mix of customers to validate that at scale, if possibly, with surveys, with interviews. And I know that's why this part is more like the validation, the iterative phase. But you also want ultimately to understand it with prospects, which is why that's why I think message testing is very useful for sales-led org, for people that it's ultimately their go-to-market motion, because you can test a lot of things quick with outbound. You can understand are people reacting a little bit. You can understand if it's relevant. You can play with pattern interruption too. Like one of my favorite example is because everyone is automating it, what you can do is you can engineer basically human mistakes. So if, for example, you have email automation running, ultimately you don't, right? You're able to have an ABM approach, and we can talk about that in another subject. But let's say that you're sending out a custom plan for a restaurant, right? You're saying to a restaurant, you're making them a menu, and it's a custom menu that is better of what they have right now because you're selling a software to a restaurant ultimately, and you're like, hey, sorry restaurant, on my list of people I think I can help, I created a custom menu for you, it's in the attachment, but you don't add the attachment, you forget to add it, and then the person is replying to you and they're like, where's the attachment? And then you are ultimately sparking a conversation and you can add it and say, oops, sorry, made a mistake, and then you're adding it. It feels more authentic, it feels less automated, and just because it's a pattern interruption of how people are usually getting sell to, it speaks to them. So there's a bunch of stuff you can do, but ultimately I think you need to always make sure it's ICP, and then you should have a healthy mix of what your audience is. Is it a mix of prospects? Do you have enough customers for it to ultimately give you data, give you a sense of it? So that's pretty much it. Does that answer your question? I feel like I I went a bit away with this one.
No, no. Let's continue. Let's continue. Eric, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna rip too because like I think you even jumped a little too far ahead, Gab. Like if I'm doing, we gotta add the context. Zach's favorite part, right? If I'm
Hell yeah.
launching a product, let's call it an integration product, and the goal of that product is to get 75% of adoption. I don't need to go test with prospects, and I probably shouldn't be testing with prospects.
Yeah, you're right.
Right. Flip side, like you said, if the goal is, hey, we aren't getting enough people to convert on our homepage, great. Let's start with more of a prospect, like heavy focus there. Mix in some customers probably to get a good, stronger hypothesis, or at least first draft of what that could look like. But I'm a big fan of running through that scientific process. So to be like, hey, here's the hypothesis. Actually, start before that. What's my observation that I'm seeing? We start there. One, we're not getting enough traffic to convert. And then you ask the question, if we change something, would they approve it? And then you jump to hypothesis and say, I want to change this to this.
Yep.
And I just don't think we're doing enough of that in general. I'm very much guilty of doing this when I'm trying to like go through any process, but we're making a change of some kind, really, or we're trying to implement something new. And so if I think we walk through that process, it starts to help us think about it. And hopefully those stakeholders are getting their hands in the kitchen. We can bring them in too. Be like, what's your hypothesis? Should we test that? Maybe there's a way you can test them both. And then you get everyone's hands in the kitchen that way. And personally, one of the big things that I feel like I've fumbled the bag on here at BetterWorks without needing details, I just have not been able to run that process. And I've been trying to run too fast without getting other people's hypotheses in, and even breaking down for them, again, observation, question, hypothesis. Here's the experiment we ran, right? I went straight to experiment, and I think it ruined everything, right? And so I would just give one piece of advice to folks is focus on that. Why are you doing it? What is your personal hypothesis? Bring in some other people's hypotheses because they're going to have opinions no matter what. And then go ahead and run those tests, right? Run those experiments.
I have a follow-up with you on that. So the first thing is, I think you nailed it perfectly. We want to run as PMMs, but whether we like it or not, we need to have different stakeholders from different departments. Or the best job of a PMM is to create feedback loops that everything is well all day running properly towards revenue. That's the way I'm seeing it. But messaging has different use case, right? Messaging has specific use case for customer success, for product, for sales, for marketing, for PMMs. I want to give a shout out to Victoria Rudy. She's writing stuff on messaging that is, I don't know how she does it, but like she's doing it in a way that is so granular and so properly explained. Please check her out on LinkedIn. She's talking about
Victoria.
Yeah, she's talking about a lot of way on how you can map. Basically, she's selling messaging audit for B2B SaaS, but a lot of mapping on how this is how your team is seeing it. This is the type of layer that they're seeing it. This is a key question you should be asking. Please check her out. But this is also bringing me to the fact that you said, I want to make sure they are aligned. But what you did is you did experimentation too soon. What do you mean by experimentation? Are you talking about the winter test you ran? And can you talk to us a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So I ran through, and I do this all the time, right? So ever since I was in grade school, I jump from problem to answer, and I don't show everyone the work in between. And so that's what I did, right? It was like, okay, we all have the same observation. Messaging is whack. We want to change it. The question to me was, if we add some boldness to this and specifically talk about the use cases as opposed to just random, I won't even call them outcomes, but will that result in more impressions, more high qualitative feedback, not just the quantitative stuff? And so my hypothesis was, if we position against, to give some context, BetterWorks is an HR platform that it basically makes the review process feel like it's happening every day instead of getting blindsided once at the end of the year. My thought process was, let's position against pizza parties and let's position against annual reviews, right? One's kind of a cultural thing. One's clearly like what we're positioning against, right? The current way of doing things. And so we got to that experiment phase. My hypothesis, one, based on the data and the qualitative feedback, we present that data, but it was a train wreck from that point on. And it quite frankly has been for several weeks, trying to get everyone back on the wagon. I think the wheels are on it, so we're moving, but it's been tough. And I realized like that was one of the biggest things, was I did all of these steps in my head, right? Got to the experiment phase and could not have a clear articulation of, here's how we got here. And by the way, I brought your hypothesis in this way. Here's how your hypothesis showed up in this test. And it burnt me. For sure.
One thing I get stuck on, and I'm always curious to explore when I hear the word hypothesis, because I've been saying this quite a few times. What is the purpose of a hypothesis when you hear that term being thrown around?
To me, I think it's purely a different way of doing this thing that you're doing now. Right? You have to have a control. So that's the thing you're doing now. And then you have to have a clear line in the sand that says, if we do this thing, I expect these results. So that it's a two-part. What is the thing I'm doing? What is the result I expect to see if we implement that? Right?
Yes.
That's my take on it.
And like it's really cool, because what you are describing is the purpose of a hypothesis, but most of us get it wrong. I think like when we say hypothesis, we're saying, this is my answer. But that's not a hypothesis. It's like what you're describing, Eric, is that a hypothesis is to understand a question. So the example you brought up with BetterWorks, you said, well, this is what we know about our product. We know that it's for HR teams. We know is that historically used in annual reviews. But what we don't know is what is a better way for them to be using it. And then you isolated a variable. Like, this is really important, because I think another mistake that we make, and Gab, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not a message testing expert by no means, but I think like it's almost like we are making Gumbo and we want to throw in all these different variables. Then it's like, when we're done, we're like, what the fuck did we just test? We're like, how can we replicate this Gumbo? Gab, I don't know, bro. We're gonna throw shit in there again and hope for the best. That's like when I heard. That's why I like his key, is that one is like, Eric, what you're saying, understand the question, and then the second thing I found that was helpful for me, and I might be wrong, is what is the one variable that we want to test? Exactly.
You nailed it. And yeah, it's basically you're making Gumbo, but you're blindfolded and you're just dropping stuff that smell good. You don't know how it will actually taste with everything else.
Yeah, you're just taking a whiff and you're like, all right, that seems about to be a
cinnamon,
feels like a pinch.
And I like, this is a sidebar, but that's what the most frustrating thing from. I love my mom's cooking so much.
Oh,
wow. And she makes some bomb Liberian. When I'm telling you, bomb Liberian food, it's like, why don't you have a restaurant yet? And then I'll ask her, I was like, Mom, how'd you create this? How'd you bake this? Well, I put a little bit of this, and I put a little bit of that.
Yeah, the classic.
And then I'll be like, how many teaspoons? You just put something in there until you taste it. And I was just
Exactly.
like,
That's how you cook with the soul, right? You
yeah.
don't look at it, just food. That's it.
And I think that's what a lot of messaging is. It's like it's cooking with the soul. And I'm like, we don't need that, guys. I need to be able to replicate this because I'm a 32-year-old man living at home by myself. I'm like, I don't have the luxury of living with you anymore. I'm not like for buyers. I am not sitting with the marketing team trying to decipher what they're saying. I can't hit up the VP of marketing at I don't know Clue and be like, "Yo, Katie, what you trying to say about win loss?" Because I'm looking at your what I can't call you up. I wish I could because a lot of these B2B homepages need a hotline. I'm gonna stop.
Wow, that's so good.
No one could probably see it the whole time. I'm dying just picturing Zach sitting eating just a great meal, right? And he's so content. And then he calls his mom up. Now he's living in Mexico. And he's like, "Yo, mom, what's that? What's that recipe for that meal?" And she's like, "Yeah, just a little bit of this and that." Zach, no. Oh.
That's my closest proxy to like looking at B2B messaging. It's great, but I'm like, how can I sell this to my team? I get it.
And not even the selling too. It's what's the stuff that we need to get rid of? Because I'm trying to make some serious change management happen with going from something where we're talking about pizza parties and annual reviews instead of working a better way. Right? That's like a whole different philosophy. And I need to be able to be like, okay, here's what's working. Here's the good stuff. See all this stuff in the control? This is stuff we got to throw out. We got to bury it, forget it ever existed. And by not doing what you just talked about, Zach, like me just dropping stuff into the pot as we go, I cannot articulate to the SDRs, the sales team, the actual executive team who are very excited about this project. I can't do any of that if I'm not writing down the ingredients onto what exactly we did to get to the end result.
I love it. But I think that's something you need to tread lightly with Winter, right? If you have the budget, I think it's one of the best solution out there. You get those answers ultra fast.
Are you shameless plugging right now? Is that what we're transitioning to? Let's go.
I'm
Y'all
shameless.
are about to get a master class. If you haven't been paying attention for the last 30 minutes of this episode, lock in. All right?
It wasn't a
Lock
plug.
in.
I'm just saying, I think Winter is a fantastic tool. I think, of course, you need to make sure you have your foundation, right? What's your urgent problem? Who's your ICP? What key message are you using? What's your positioning ultimately? Because otherwise, it's if we take that example of Eric, the test you did with Better Work, we will replace Pizza Party. Are we addressing basically employees are sick and tired of it? Or are we, when we're talking about basically get a eye on the work you're doing and always have a pulse of what's happening with your employees, then we're talking to HR leaders. So I think there's a lot of components that you need to get right. And just to finish that element, the hypothesis to me is basically we want to create a clear, testable, and explanation of why our current messaging isn't working and how to fix it. We want to be able to, okay, what's the root cause? What like basically uplift can we get with that? So an example that I have, for example, is Freckle. And I know we talked about them on the pod before, but
Zach,
Freckle,
I don't have any freckles.
killing me. You're killing me. Basically, Freckle is a clear alternative, right? And an hypothesis template you can follow is basically this. Our problem is caused by messaging gap and is creating uplift objective. To fix this, we should act on messaging gap by doing action because of trigger. So in that case, for Freckle, the problem that we have might be low demo to close rate, right? Prospect are getting on demo, but they are confused on what the product is. And then the messaging gap might be the confusion about what the product does, which in that case might be a positioning problem. Maybe we're not talking about the alternative properly. And an uplift objective, what we're trying to get might be, okay, if we fix the problem, we might get 20% more qualified opportunities getting on demos. To fix this, we should act on clarity and ease of use for non-technical users. Clay people are usually agencies, people that have a technical background. So if we talk about the clarity of what we are, a Clay alternative, and the ease of use for people that don't know it, then we can clearly differentiate ourselves from Clay, the action that we want to take. And the idea of where this is coming from, the trigger, is because sales calls recording and social monitoring on Clay, when we're talking to people that are using it, show that prospect understand and struggle on how we compare with them. So when you have that, you're able to already come up with, hey, this is what I believe. I'm really coming with a data driven approach. And I know it's again a buzzword, but it's better than to check data and check those metrics and micro attention and signals than testing opinion and going with the person that is getting paid like 300K a year versus you, right? So last shameless plug, I did a complete message testing starter pack, and I'm talking about this, how to test it properly, how to get there. So you can check it out at message-market-kit. No, sorry. Fuck. That's why I don't like doing self promotion, because
All right, so this was actually a
fucked up the name.
shameful. This was a shameful plug because he couldn't get his.
Exactly.
I'm about to buy that domain now, and I'm just gonna soft launch a photo of Eric and I with freckles, and then Gab's gonna people gonna hit up Gab and be like, "Yo, is this your message test? You got a black dude with measles on here." I'll be like, "Bro, that's not measles. Those are my freckles."
Lack of clarity on the
freckles
URL.
in the red wig. All right, so back to the proper URL. What's the proper URL for your message?
Thank you.
Proper?
It's message-market-fit.com.
All right.
So there you'll be able to download a resource called the Message Testing Starter Pack, and you'll have a shit ton of stuff. And if you need help, I also just launched a service to help product marketers test their messaging properly.
So Gab doesn't know this, but we're making him pay us for the sponsorship ad he just ran.
Exactly, and guys, we're getting
and it's much longer than
so.
the 45 seconds, so we're charging him double.
Yeah, I'm looking at the. I will never financially recover from this.
And if you mention freckles on your discovery call with him, you get a 5% discount.
The testing cake.
Gab, I heard your episode. Freckles, I want a 5% discount now.
In all reality, though, I will say this. So Gab's approach is, if you really give a damn about testing your messaging, if you actually want to get in there and learn something, like we all have been learning how to do product marketing for the last several years, this is a resource that no one's actually really put out there, right? They'll teach you how to do messaging. They'll teach you how to do pricing. They'll teach you how to do all of the other little bits that I think we all have to do, but no one actually says, hey, once you have that strategy, go out and validate if it's the one you should be working with. I definitely hop on it. I've been trying to pick these little nuggets and how can I actually start implementing this in my process. It'll make me look a lot smarter for sure when I go to these talks with executives and they look at me like I'm a crazy person. Yeah, I'd say if you're not doing message testing at all, go ahead, steal some budget from somebody and spend some money if you have to. But it's such a priority, and I've seen the difference, right? Like I've seen the major difference, even at Clue with their last win-loss launch. People were coming in the door and signing up within that week, right? Because we went out, we tested our messaging. It wasn't nearly as robust as I would have liked to, but we just did it. And the ROI on that is huge. Plus it's shit, man. It is fun to just test stuff and see what works in a structured way that doesn't feel like you're shooting at the hip.
Exactly. Thank you for that. And it's basically the way I'm thinking about it. It's the most expensive part of your go-to-market, right?
Oh.
It's foundational. I've seen countless and countless startups running outbound campaigns and trying to get prospects and like posting on LinkedIn and cold DMings and everything, going at me and being like, Gab, why are we not getting results? And I'm like, I've been telling you for weeks that your messaging and your positioning sucks, that we should change this and change that. Like it can be seen as like a vitamin versus a painkiller, but when you take a look at how much money you could potentially lose and that like the increasing cost of opportunity, like if what you're trying to do is get a quick win on how can we actually improve the benchmark and everything else we're putting out there, start with your messaging. Like that's the core element that will deliver you results and everything else.
Yeah,
I just think you just don't have freckles in your outbound messages. That's why you're not getting.
Yeah, add freckle IO and you'll see. We'll get paid a lot more.
I'm totally with you. And if you just can't be clear with what you want to say, like what's stopping anybody else in your market from doing it and stealing your customers, stealing your prospects, stealing your business? Like literally just my old company just had to sell to their biggest competitor because they could not figure out their message. They definitely by far had a better product. They actually had a website who could like relatively guide you along and give you some content. They could not tell a story that resonated and was able to capture enough market to keep them in business.
They didn't take John Mayer's hit song "Say What You Need to Say" to heart, and that's why they lost.
Damn.
Say what you need to say.
Say what you need to say.
That was great. At the Chase Center. That was great. All right, boys. Anything else you want to toss in here before we wrap up another episode?
I feel like. Oh no, go ahead.
No, I just said I had actually no idea. It's like my body said a noise, but no.
Make sure no one edits that out.
Some of the noises would get.
All
right, Zach. Anything else from you, man?
What's helpful for me, based on what I've heard so far, is that it sounds like with the messaging by itself is to start a conversation, and what we were trying to assess with message testing is the second piece is like what is the best way to start this conversation with our one person, focus on one problem, and like what you said earlier, Eric, was really helpful, is that a hypothesis is to understand that question, not necessarily have an answer, because we don't know the answer. If we did, we wouldn't have message testing, but to understand that answer and identify what is that one variable. So I think the takeaway for me is that when I'm talking with clients moving forward is that when they're saying, oh, it's this and this, I'm like, okay, what is one variable we can test today? And what is that rapid way? Because it sounds like the way that we're doing it, the Gumbo way, is not working. It tastes good.
Brilliant. Yep.
But we can't replicate it.
That's right.
You nailed it, dude.
All right, cool, man. I'm about to buy you your URL now and just put a photo from the website of me with freckles now.
Let's go.
It's available at a very interesting price of $0. So
I don't know what the fuck this photo is of this guy with freckles, but
I'm buying it.
I'm buying it.
I need this service. Oh, shit. We do respond after 11 p.m. And that is another episode of We're Not Marketers.
See you guys.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you for listening to We're Not Marketers. If you liked what you heard, please subscribe, review our podcast, and share this episode with other PMMs. Thanks again, and see you soon.